All right, let's get right into it. Today we are talking about something that is a huge deal for anyone even thinking about clean energy and your wallet. We're calling it the 2025 Clean Energy Credit Cliff.
So, have you been kicking around the idea of putting solar panels on the roof, or maybe getting a new, super efficient heat pump? What about finally pulling the trigger on an electric car? If any of that sounds like you, then you really need to lean in for this, because the entire financial equation for these projects is about to get turned on its head.
30%. For years, this has been the magic number. You know, the one that makes a huge $30,000 or $40,000 project suddenly seem doable. It's a massive discount. But what is it exactly? And more importantly, why are we talking about it like it's about to disappear?
Well, because it is. That 30% is the big federal tax credit for homeowners, the residential clean energy credit. It can literally slash thousands, sometimes tens of thousands of dollars off the price of solar panels or a home battery system. But here's the cliff. After December 31st, 2025, that credit is scheduled to go from 30% to zero. Gone. So you're probably thinking, wait a minute, I thought these credits were good until like 2032. And you weren't wrong. That was the plan. But a major new law just hit the scene, and it basically threw the old timeline out the window and started a whole new countdown. So the old law, the Inflation Reduction Act, you've probably heard it called the IRA, gave everybody this nice long 10-year runway for all these clean energy tax credits. It was stable. But then this past summer, a new piece of legislation, let's just call it the One Big Beautiful Bill Act for our purposes, got signed into law. And what it did was repeal or seriously shorten the lifespan of those very same credits. It basically hit the fast forward button on their expiration date.
Okay, so this brings us to the most important part of this whole conversation, the new deadlines. And let's be clear, these are not suggestions. These are hard and fast cutoffs that will decide whether you get a huge chunk of cash back from the government or you don't. And that first deadline is coming up fast.
Right, let's walk through this because every date here is crucial. The very first cliff we're going to hit is for electric vehicles. That credit of up to $7,500 for a new EV, it's gone if you buy the car after September 30th, 2025. Then comes the really big one for homeowners, that 30% discount for solar, for batteries, for things like heat pumps and new windows. All of that vanishes on December 31st, 2025. As we roll into 2026, credits for installing an EV charger and for builders who build energy-efficient homes, they expire on June 30th. And for the big commercial solar and wind farms, they're in a mad dash to meet their own deadlines too.
Now, for those of you who like the nitty-gritty details, here are the actual IRS codes. You've got 30D and 25E for the new and used cars. But the two that most people are going to be racing against are Section 25D, that's the big one for solar, and Section 25C, which covers all the home efficiency stuff. And the language from the IRS is crystal clear. No credit is allowed for projects placed in service or for money spent after these dates. So you might be thinking, okay, I get it. I just have to get my project done in time. And you're right. But what happens if you don't? Missing the deadline isn't just about losing a discount. It can actually trigger something we're calling the solar trap, a hidden financial risk that could suddenly cost you $10,000 or even more.
The real danger is buried in the fine print of how most solar loans are structured. See, they're often what are called re-amortizing loans. That's a fancy term, but what it means is that the loan is created from day one with a massive assumption baked right in. The assumption that you will get that 30% tax credit back and you will use it to pay down a huge chunk of your loan, usually within the first year and a half.
Let me walk you through how this trap springs. So step 1, you sign on the dotted line for, say, a $33,333 solar system. The salesperson shows you this great low monthly payment, which is all based on you getting a $10,000 tax credit. Step 2, delays happen, permitting, equipment, whatever, and your project isn't finished until January 2026. You just missed the deadline. That $10,000 credit is gone. Step 3, about 18 months later, you get a notice from the lender. They want that $10,000 prepayment you were supposed to make, but you don't have it because you never got the credit. And here's the trap. Step 4, the lender recalculates your entire loan based on the full, higher balance, and your monthly payment shoots up, sometimes so high it completely wipes out any money you were supposed to be saving on electricity.
And believe me, this isn't just some theoretical what-if. It happens. As this quote from the Washington Informer points out, the consequences can be absolutely devastating. People get stuck paying off these loans for decades, seeing zero savings, and in the worst-case scenarios, they can actually lose their homes. That is the real danger of this credit cliff.
Now, as you can probably guess, all of this new urgency creates a perfect storm for high-pressure salespeople and, frankly, for scams. Predatory companies are already using this ticking clock as a weapon to rush people into making really bad decisions.
Okay, before we go any further, we have to lock down the single most important term in this whole thing: placed in service. This is the official IRS definition. It means the day the installation is complete and the system is fully operational. It has absolutely nothing to do with when you sign a contract or when you write a check for a deposit. A salesperson can get you to sign and pay for everything in December 2025, but if that system isn't up and running until January 2026, you do not get the credit. End of story.
So how can you spot someone who's trying to use this deadline against you? You need to look for these red flags. This deal is only good for today line is a classic. They're trying to stop you from comparing prices. If they claim to be from some special government program, that's almost always a lie. These are federal credits available to anyone. A huge red flag is if they discourage you from getting another quote, or if they refuse to leave a written proposal with you. All of these tactics have one goal: to create a fake sense of urgency so you sign before you have time to think.
You know, the difference between a good company and a bad one is like night and day. A reputable installer will give you a detailed quote that's good for at least a couple of weeks. They'll be so confident in their offer that they'll encourage you to get other bids. A high-pressure outfit, on the other hand, will invent deadlines and make claims about being the best price without wanting you to actually check. Okay, so we've got the deadlines, we've got the financial traps, we've got the scammers. It's a lot. So what do you actually do now? Let's put together a playbook so you can act instead of just reacting. All right, for homeowners, rule number 1 is to start looking now, but don't panic buy. Seriously, installer schedules for 2025 are already getting jammed. When you find one you like, you must get a written guarantee in your contract for a placed-in-service date before December 31st, 2025. That's non-negotiable. Always get at least 3 quotes, and most importantly, you need to look your lender in the eye or on the phone and ask, what happens to my monthly payment if I don't make that big prepayment with the tax credit? Get the answer in writing. And finally, don't forget to check for state and local incentives. A lot of those will still be around in 2026.
Now, for any business owners or developers listening, the rules are a bit different for you. Your magic date is July 4th, 2026. That's the begin construction deadline. That has a specific legal meaning, and you need to either start serious physical work or have spent 5% of the total project cost by then. The whole industry is racing to this date, so you should expect major bottlenecks in equipment and labor. And a heads up, if you're looking at a power purchase agreement to buy electricity long-term, you'll likely see higher rates for projects that miss this deadline.
So what's the real bottom line impact if you miss the cutoff? Well, it's not like solar suddenly becomes a bad idea, but it does completely change the math. Without that 30% discount from the feds, the time it takes for a project to actually pay for itself, it gets a whole lot longer.
And this chart really tells the story. With the 30% credit, a normal solar project might pay for itself in energy savings in around 7 years. But take that credit away, and suddenly you're looking at 12 years, maybe more. That's 5 extra years before you're actually saving money.
So, if you take one thing away from all this, let it be this. A truly massive federal discount that has fueled the clean energy world for a long time is about to come to a very sudden stop. So, you need to plan for it, act deliberately, and be incredibly suspicious of anyone who tries to rush you.
You know, this whole thing is bigger than just a few tax credits expiring. The end of these incentives marks a huge shift in our national energy policy, and we're going to feel the ripples from this for a very long time. And that really leaves us with the big unanswered question for the future. For more than a decade, the federal government has had its thumb on the scale, pushing everyone toward renewables. Now, that thumb is being lifted, so will the momentum keep going on its own? Will state-level programs and the fact that solar panels and batteries are getting cheaper every year, would that be enough to keep the transition going? Honestly, that's the multi-billion-dollar question. Thanks for tuning in.